A self-made man, devoted to his family, his kids.
Goodness.
And proud of the life he had built from the ground up. But in a single, unthinkable moment,
she said, well, he didn't come home last night. I said, Kate, what is it?
It was all taken away.
Blood was all over his face and chest and everything.
What followed was a heartbreaking mystery.
Everyone knew that he had a lot of money.
And a family's tireless fight to uncover the truth.
I want the people who did this to be brought to justice.
Betrayal, lies, and a devastating discovery.
When I opened the trunk, his trunk was loaded down with bags and bags of Kirby silver.
Far closer to home than anyone could have imagined.
He said, there's something about that man. I don't think I could ever turn my back on him.
Up next on Law&Crime Investigates.
True crime is a story until it's your story.
The penalty is death.
Get your family out of here.
What do you mean?
I will have my attorney call you.
So unbelievable.
Tippah County, Mississippi. It's exactly what you would imagine a small southern town to be. A place where everyone knows everybody else, where peace and quiet run aplenty. Drama is not what people do here. You're supposed to just fit in. But that wasn't Kirby Carpenter.
He was extremely unique. Kirby was a very unique individual. He was interested in so many unique type of things. He was very authentic and true to himself. No matter who he was around or where he was at, Kirby was who he was. And if he believed in something or he loved something, everybody around him knew it. He made that known. His job, I guess you would call, which really was not a job to him, was in the precious metals business, gold, silver, coins. He had a coin exchange store on the square here in town, and he would get mad if you called it a pawn shop. It wasn't a pawn shop, and it wasn't. And so a lot of people would come to him to sell their things that were of value, and he would buy them from them, and then he would resell them or keep them. He put in the first wine and spirits store here in town, and he ran it very successfully for several years, and then he sold it. And then there was another city 20 miles from us that when they legalized the sale of liquor there, he opened a liquor store there. Actually, the store was in the parking lot of the Tractor Supply Company, which is where Caitlin worked, and that's how they met.
It was around 2019. Caitlin Spence was Kirby's age. They didn't grow up in the same town or have many friends in common, but once they started dating, they quickly fell in love.
Honestly, we loved her.
We loved her.
We loved her. She was very down to earth. She was very grounded. She seemed to be extremely good with Kirby's oldest child, his son.
Goodness. Hey.
She really just fit right in with the family.
Yes.
In 2021, Caitlin and Kirby announced they were having their first child together, a baby girl.
The pregnancy pictures look beautiful. They look happy.
Yeah.
Caitlin gave birth in July of 2022.
It was the perfect life.
And she was a good mom.
Yeah, she was a good mom. I mean, she was a member of the family. She would just come to mom's just to visit and hang out.
Right.
You know, even when Kirby was out, doing his work thing. He also owned several real estate properties, and he was in the process of applying to open a medical marijuana dispensary.
He liked nice things, and he wasn't shy about it.
Yeah,
right.
You're exactly right.
That's it.
He loved nice things. He loved collectible things, and he loved to let people see those things. He had collectible cars. He had obviously all of the gold and silver collectible things, and he had just collections of stuff, instruments, guitars, everything that he had was extremely valuable.
Was Kirby really well known in town?
Oh yes.
Yes, very well known.
Very well known.
And I mean, everyone that knew him knew that he had a lot of money.
When we talk a lot of money, are we talking millions?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, he wasn't shy
Never
about
denied it. He wasn't
Yeah.
shy about it at all.
In fact, I think at some point all of us said to him, "Hey, you need to, you don't need to be
Right.
sharing with people that,
Yeah,
those things.
Don't tell,
Not his things, but like things that he would, he'd have
Don't
a
tell
bag of
people
money on
what
him
you
all the
got.
time."
probably between $300,000 to $500,000 in it, in that bag that he carried.
To him, yes, he was making money, and yes, all this was worth money, but this was a business, but it was also a hobby for him. So I feel like he was just able to have fun, and he was passionate about what he did because he loved it, and he was able to make money doing it. As much as he loved his job and the things he did and the hobbies he had, nothing ever in his life gave him purpose, I think, the way having a child did. He was just a different person. He just was completely head over heels, I mean, any parent is, but it was just something to watch, to know that, he was just a good daddy.
Kate texted Mama.
She asked, had I seen Kirby?
Yeah.
And I said, no. She said, well, he didn't come home last night. And I told her, I said, Kate, that scares me. That's not like Kirby, because Kirby was going to be home in his bed every night, and he was going to wake up in his bed. So I tried to call him, and I also sent him a text. And I told her, I said, I'm fixing to put out an APB out on him. And she said, no, wait just a little bit. Let me get little girl fed, and we'll walk up to the deer stand. Maybe he's in the deer stand. And I said, well, when you get to the deer stand, you call me back and let me know if he is there. She calls me, and then she said, he wasn't at the deer stand. She said, I don't know where his ass is. She said, I can't find him. I said, well, I'm coming to look for him. And then all of a sudden she says, Kirby. And I said, Kate, what is it? And it was just like she laid the phone down or something. She didn't hang it up or nothing. It was like, she didn't say nothing else. So I jumped in the car and I took off, and I called my husband, and all I could say was, get to Kirby's, get to Kirby's, get to Kirby's. He said, what is it? I said, I don't know. Just get to Kirby's. And that's all I could say was, get to Kirby's, get to Kirby's, get to Kirby's.
I'm a teacher at an elementary school in Alabama, and I was at work, and I could hear my cell phone ringing, and I looked at it and saw that it was my mom's name. And when I said hello, she just kept screaming, he's gone, he's gone, he's gone.
All I can remember is jumping out of the car, and when I took off running over there, my husband kept pushing me back, and he said, no, you cannot. And I said, I've got to see my baby.
And I said, take a breath, you've got to tell me what's wrong. Who's gone? What has happened? And she said, he's gone, my baby is gone. And I said, what do you mean he's gone? And she said, he's gone to heaven. My stepdad, Dwayne, got on the phone, and he said, Wendy, Kirby has been shot, and it is not self-inflicted. He's gone. You guys have got to get here.
Kirby Carpenter was only 36 years old at the time of his murder. Investigators say he had been shot in the chest several times by someone with a shotgun. His body was found on the side of his house near the garage. Someone had put a curtain and a toolbox on top of his body.
I got on my knees and I begged God just to take me. He needed to live. He had babies to raise. I had lived my life. Just take me. Please don't take him. And then when I realized it wasn't to be, all I could scream was, no. And I remember the resource officer pulling up the cover that was on him, and I seen him laying there with his eyes open, and and it was like blood was all over his face and chest and everything, and I just lost it from there.
Who covered him?
Whoever killed him.
And he was covered with a toolbox laid over him, also, like a toolbox that goes on the back of a truck.
Where was the toolbox laying on him?
It was holding the cover that was over him.
Did Caitlin ever say how he got a blanket over him?
No, she said
In fact, she told the resource officer said that when he got there, that he went to uncover him to look and to verify that it was Kirby. And her words were, "Oh my God, Kirby, he's killed himself." No, how could he have killed himself?
Actually,
put a covering over himself
right.
and a toolbox.
Actually, the resource officer looked at Kate and told her, he said, "This is no suicide." He said, "This is a homicide."
Yeah.
They think he was shot in the garage.
They think that Kirby was shot in the garage. They think that he was killed as soon as he came home that night.
Police note drag marks of blood from the garage to the side of the house where his body was found.
Okay, I am currently standing where Kirby's body was found, looking back toward the home.
The surveillance cameras, which would have caught exactly what happened, had been disconnected, and the central cloud storage station was missing.
I'm thinking at the time that somebody has come in Kirby's driveway, shot him, and left, and like it had just happened. And then later we found out that he had been dead for 2 days.
All of us were in extreme shock, and just absolutely devastated. At that point, we were thinking, oh my God, who would have done this?
It put a fear in me that I never dreamed I could have.
At this point, you guys are thinking there is someone out there
Yes.
that killed him.
That's exactly what we were thinking. So of course we did think about dealings that, could have gone south with Kirby and, some of his business dealings. He did have dealings with a lot of different people, and there were some people that probably didn't care that much for Kirby, because if he believed something, he told you that's what he believed. If he stood on something, he stood on it. So yeah, I mean, he probably had some people who didn't care for him. And so I remember asking Caitlin, who would have done this to Kirby? Like, who would have any reason to kill Kirby? She looked at me and just so quickly, she said, meth heads. And I said, meth heads? She said, yeah. And I said, for what? And she said, money. And I said, no, they said he had money in his pocket. So for months afterward, every day, it's all we could think about. And we would just, sit and just, toss ideas off one another. Well, what about this, business, or what about this deal, or what about this person? There had been a couple people in Kirby's past that he had not gotten along with. In fact, the story that Caitlin initially told was that she had heard a conversation between Kirby and someone the previous week, and that they had kind of a confrontational conversation, and that the person told Kirby, this is the kind of stuff that gets families killed.
Kirby and Caitlin weren't the only ones living in Kirby's home at the time. After Caitlin gave birth to their daughter in July of 2022, her parents, Jeff and Karen Spence, came to stay at Kirby's house.
They came in July with the intent to help for a couple weeks, and they stayed through August, September, October, November. We know that they had their home in Saltville, Virginia, but then we ended up being told later on that that was in foreclosure.
In foreclosure. Kirby was taking care of them. He fed them. He took care of them. They were in his home. Actually, he was even looking for them a home. He was going to buy them a home here so he could get them out of his house.
He told my husband a few times, I appreciate the help that they've given us, but, no house, no matter how big, is big enough for two families. And he made the comment several times, I'm just really getting ready to have our space and us just be home as a family, because they had lingered for so long. The
first time that he met her father, Kirby said, there's something about her dad. He said, I don't think I could ever turn my back on him. And my husband says, Kirby, You only met him for like 15 minutes. He said, I know that. He said, but I'm telling you, there's something about that man. He said, I don't think I could ever turn my back on him.
He'd had a very good intuition. I
Yes.
mean, about people. He could read people well. And he, if he said something, usually it turned out to be so. And a lot of times I think that we just brush that off as, Kirby's just being Kirby, he's being paranoid about it.
There was a time when Kirby said something to you about her.
Yes. So, at one point when she and Kirby were dating, we were at Mom's and we were standing in the front yard talking. And he told me, he said, I just don't know about Kate. And I said, what do you mean you don't know about Kate? Of course, we all loved her. And he said, if there's just something about her, I just don't know if I trust her. And I said, Kirby, you've got to stop. You got to stop being like that. You got to stop thinking that, everybody's out to get you.
Kirby's family didn't think back to these conversations initially, but something did stand out right away. After Kirby was found, his family realized Jeff and Karen Spence weren't at the house.
Kirby was found on Friday, December 2nd. And so I remember asking Caitlin that night in the garage at Mom's, I remember asking her, when did your parents leave? Because we had all just been there the week before on Thanksgiving. And so I was thinking in my mind, hold on, where are your parents? Because nobody had mentioned anything to us about them leaving, not being here anymore. They had not mentioned at Thanksgiving that they were planning to leave. And so I asked her and she said, oh, they left Tuesday night. And then we ended up finding out Kirby was murdered on Wednesday.
To get this straight, Caitlin's parents left on Tuesday. Investigators believe Kirby was killed on Wednesday. And it wasn't until that Friday that Kirby's body was discovered. Jeff and Karen Spence returned to Kirby's home that Sunday.
Casey went out in the garage to talk with Jeff. They talked for a good while, and I ended up walking out there where they were at, and I talked for a while, and then Casey and him walked back in the house. When I went to walk out of the garage, something just told me, check his trunk. And I just opened his car door and popped the trunk. When I opened the trunk, his trunk was loaded down with bags and bags and bags of Kirby's silver. I'm thinking, oh my God, he is not taking Kirby's things. So I didn't go confront him or nothing. I went to unloading that car is what I done. I closed the trunk and then after everything was over that day, we went home and whatever. Well, that evening, somebody had called us and told us that they had vehicles backed up to the house and they were loading them down. So I went, I had to knock on the door because they had changed the locks on the doors of the house.
Mama went ahead and called the law, and they had a whole conversation. She explained to law enforcement what had happened previously that same day. And she actually told one of the officers, she said, and I bet if I open his trunk right now, there will be more stuff in there. And she did, and there was.
What was in it?
More of Kirby's
bags
more
of
of
silver.
Kirby's bags of silver and stuff.
So what did police do at that point?
They couldn't do anything.
They couldn't get involved.
They could not get involved because they said it was a civil matter and they could not get involved in it. But they could not stop me from getting in it. And I put my arm in there. When I did, I went to pulling Kirby's stuff out again.
Kirby's family later discovers that someone had changed the locks on all Kirby's safes. In late December 2022, Caitlin, Jeff, and Karen Spence move out of Kirby's house.
Mom was at Kirby's house, and this was after they had left. And she was walking up the stairs and saw a little spot of what appeared to be blood on one of the stairs. And so she called and notified law enforcement, hey, this kind of looks like blood. Y'all need to come down here and look at this. And so they did.
The investigator used luminol, and when he used the luminol on the stairs, it blew up like a firecracker. There was so much blood there. There, all over the sink in the kitchen.
And they took a sample of it.
It made Kirby's sister, Casey Barnes, think back to something she said someone mentioned to them about Jeff Spence at Kirby's funeral.
We had someone tell us that they didn't know who Jeff was. They didn't realize who he was. However, they ran into him in the bathroom immediately following the funeral, and that he had his, shirt kind of raised using the restroom, and that he had a bandage on his side. Everything that happened just continued to point to them.
As time goes on, Kirby's family's suspicions grow. It reaches a fever pitch in the summer of 2023 when they're no longer able to get in touch with Caitlin Spence. They think she may be living with Kirby's daughter at her parents' home in Saltville, Virginia.
I wasn't getting any response from her, and had been trying for several days, and she wasn't replying, and so we were concerned, and so I actually contacted the Saltville police and asked for a welfare check. He said, what are we going to check for? And I told him, I was like, my niece is there. Supposedly this is the house where she's supposed to be. I've been trying to contact her mother for days. I can't get her. And he called back and he said, ma'am, I just wanted to call you back and let you know that there is not a house at the address that you sent me. And I was like, what do you mean there's not a house there? I was like, Mom is mailing child support payments to that address every month. And those checks are being cashed. That's got to be where they are. And he said, there's nothing standing there but a mailbox. He said that home has burned. And so at that point, we became extremely concerned.
The concerns keep growing. Investigators discover that in early November, shortly before Kirby's murder, Jeff and Karen Spence had made a series of large deposits in their joint bank account: $26,000, $50,000, and $97,000. Days after Kirby's murder, Jeff Spence pens a handwritten will, leaving all his, quote, worldly possessions to his wife, Karen Spence, writing, "I've strived to be a good man, father, husband, son, and friend. As I slip the bounds of this earthly existence, I look forward to whatever is next." Caitlin also writes a will, leaving everything behind to her and Kirby's daughter, telling her daughter, quote, "This life has been a beautiful one. You are your mother's savage daughter. Do not ever forget that. I am always with you." And then came the real blow to Kirby's family.
While Kirby's body was being found here and we were finding out that he was dead, Jeff and Karen were in Virginia opening a safe deposit box that day, putting Kirby's belongings.
Police believe the items belonged to Kirby because they were found alongside a personal check he had written to someone.
At least 3 months after Kirby was killed, I would lay awake every night and come up with these things in my head of what could have happened so that Kate was not involved. I mean, I can remember making up these things like, well,
We all did.
what if her dad did this and she didn't know about it?
On November 30th, 2023, 1 year to the day that Kirby Carpenter was murdered, police arrest Caitlin, Jeffrey, and Karen Spence. Prosecutors say they conspired and stole a large sum of Kirby's cash, silver coins, gold bars, and other precious metals. They were charged with conspiracy, grand larceny, and capital murder.
That day that they were arrested was the day that he was killed the year before. And we had set up to have a fireworks show at Kirby's house.
And then we found out that day that they had arrested him. And so we actually had a fireworks celebration.
Yes.
Kirby loved fireworks. And so we decided that night, after we found out that the people responsible for killing him had been arrested, that we were going to make it a Kirby celebration.
It turned out to be a big celebration. Neighbors came. Even the whole fire departments and stuff came.
Praise God, the day has come.
It was just unreal. All I could do was scream. I mean, I was just so happy they were behind bars.
At the first hearing for the Spences, prosecutors revealed that the last text Kirby received before his death was from Caitlin. It was just after 6:30 p.m. on November 30th. She asked him where he was. Kirby said he was heading home. He had just passed a local tire shop, which was about 15 minutes away. Investigators say Caitlin was not home when Kirby arrived back at the house. They know she was with her daughter at the local Walmart at 7 p.m. because she was seen on the store's surveillance cameras. The local sheriff testifies that after Caitlin left the Walmart around 7:15, she sat in her car in the parking lot for 45 minutes. Caitlin told police she was breastfeeding. The sheriff says she texted Kirby during that time asking if he wanted Chinese food for dinner. She didn't get a response. Police say Caitlin arrived home later that evening. Caitlin's reasons for not noticing Kirby's body outside the garage, despite living in the home for 2 days, remain unclear. But where was Jeff Spence during this time? Prosecutors say they're not entirely sure because his phone was turned off for several days around the time Kirby was murdered. But they believe he was in Kirby's house at some point. Remember the blood on the stairs that police tested? The DNA came back as a male relative of Caitlin Spence. After Kirby's murder, police tore through Kirby's house looking for evidence. They found that missing central station for the surveillance cameras hidden behind some boxes in a room where Kirby kept all his safes. And what about that big shoulder bag of money that everyone knew Kirby always carried with him? Police looked everywhere for it.
That bag never did show up. So where did it go? And also, he had a pistol in his front pocket that has never been found.
And he probably went everywhere with the pistol.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
He did. He always had the pistol.
Always.
And not only did he always have the pistol, but when law enforcement went through his pockets, he had 3 bullets in his pocket for
Yes.
that pistol. So he wouldn't have had the bullets in his pocket without the pistol.
Jeffrey Spence remains behind bars. We contacted his attorney for an interview, but he declined. During Jeffrey Spence's first hearing on the charges, his attorney tells the judge that prosecutors have zero proof that he killed Kirby. He points out that Jeff Spence also deals in gold and silver, which explains why he had those items. His attorney tried to have the charges dismissed due to the lack of a speedy trial, but the judge denied that motion and set a trial date for September of 2025. Jeffrey and Karen Spence will be tried together. That's when they'll come face to face with the prosecution's star witness, Caitlin Spence.
Caitlin had to make a very important and difficult decision, and that was, would she choose to cooperate with the state of Mississippi with what she knew? She maintained her innocence. With regard to killing Kirby, who she loved very much, and she maintained she didn't know anything about the murder or had no participation in the murder, was not involved in the planning of the murder, and did not know anything about it until after it had occurred. She implicates her father, and her father made admissions of killing Kirby. She does not implicate her mother.
Caitlin's attorney, Anthony Faris, says Caitlin had developed growing suspicions about her father's alleged involvement in Kirby's murder. And in the spring of 2023, she decided to confront him.
They have a private walk in an area called the Waterfall, and she confronts her father regarding what happened. Did you do this to Kirby? And that is when Jeffrey Spence makes admissions to her. And it was in essence a confession by Jeffrey Spence. She was aware of that information, did not share it, helped conceal it.
She also hid it from you.
She did, but you've got to understand that Caitlin is or was a daddy's girl, and she expected her father to do the right thing and come forward and save her from this ordeal. She thought that Jeffrey Spence would come in and do the right thing and tell what happened and really clear her for sure and clear her mother and then take his chances. But Jeffrey Spence is not that kind of man and certainly did not do that. So we reached the point where Caitlin had to fish or cut bait, as they say in Mississippi. And so she had the most difficult decision that she's ever had to make. And that is to come forward to tell the truth and agree to testify against her father, the man that she's loved, who has been her knight in shining armor all of her life until this point.
Faree says there's another reason Caitlin had to fish or cut bait, as they say.
Caitlin loves her daughter, wants to be with her daughter. The penalty for capital murder is death in Mississippi or life without parole. The district attorney's office announced that they would not be seeking the death penalty, but the only other penalty is life without parole. So that certainly is not attractive when you're looking at the necessity of raising your young daughter. I was able to negotiate a plea agreement on Caitlin's behalf. After much prayer and consideration on her part, she decided to accept that plea offer, which was that the offense of capital murder would be reduced to that of accessory after the fact, the capital murder, which changes the maximum penalty from life without parole to maximum of 20 years.
In April 2025, Caitlin Spence stood before a judge and pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact to murder.
You know, she testified at that hearing that she had a conversation with her father in the spring of 23, and that during that conversation, he became mean and aggressive with her, and that he had never been like that with her in her entire life. And the statements that he made to her when she flat out asked if he killed Kirby were very incriminating.
He made statements like, the less you know, the better.
I did what I had to do.
I did what I had to do.
And don't look
Don't
a
look a
gift
gift
horse
horse in the mouth. One of the things that she said was that her dad told her, you can't tell anybody this because it will tear our family apart.
And, you know, for her to be tearful while she was saying that, just, I was very, very, very angry. Actually kind of stormed out of the courtroom. I just felt like I had to get up and run. You know, I was so mad that she's sitting there talking about her family being torn apart. You know, I have said since the beginning, before we even suspected that, or, you know, had any knowledge that they could be involved, that anyone who knew before, during, or after the murder was just as guilty. And I stand on that.
I was so numb for so many days afterward. And actually, even now, I feel numb because I feel like that we've really been let down.
Shortly after appearing in court and agreeing to testify against her parents, Caitlin Spence was released. She has to wear a GPS monitor. For Kirby's family, it's another step forward toward justice, a step, though, they call bittersweet.
You know, when the true crime thing kind of blew up and everybody, you know, I was one of those that I listened to the podcast, I read the books, I read the stories, you know, I watched the TV shows, and you always feel for those victims and their families. But, you know, before this, all of those were a story to me. And Kirby's story is just that to so many people. It's a story. But this is our real life. You know, we have to deal with this every single day. True crime is a story until it's your story. And that completely changes everything.
My life has went from being whole as a family to being something that I have to worry about every day. Something that Kirby is on my mind 24/7. I go to sleep with him on my mind. I wake up with him on my mind.
I want the people who did this to be brought to justice, but I never want Kirby to be forgotten. That's probably my number one thing, is that they are brought to justice and that his children will know how much he loved them, and that they will know the quirky things that made their daddy their daddy. It was Casey's idea to start a scholarship fund. We have actually had people donate, and we were able to give $5,000 to 10 different seniors who are going to college or trade school. A lot of the reason that we're speaking out is to keep his memory alive and to do things to honor him and to show to show his children right and wrong, but also to show them that, you know, just because we lose somebody here on earth doesn't mean that we can't do things to honor their memory.
Karen Spence hasn't entered a plea in this case. In August 2024, she was released on a $150,000 bond. She also has to wear a GPS monitor. We reached out to her attorney, who declined an interview. That attorney recently filed an alibi defense notice with the court. It says that Karen Spence will testify that she left Mississippi with her husband the afternoon of November 29th, the day before Kirby was killed, that they drove back to Saltville, Virginia for Karen's doctor's appointment. The notice says that Karen intends to call her daughter, Caitlin Spence, as a witness to this fact, and that she may also call her husband as a witness. A judge granted a motion by the defense to move the trial against Jeffrey and Karen Spence to a different county because of all the attention the case has garnered in the local community. The new venue is about an hour away. Kirby Carpenter deserved more years than he was given. He believed in living life hard, fast, and big, loving his family, his kids, and friends throughout it all. After Kirby's murder, his family found a poem he had written in a journal. They don't know when he wrote it or what it was about, but the words hold incredible significance to them now. Kirby wrote, quote, "It never fails, the good you do will be done unto you. Karma exists, and don't think it's not true. The man who stole from me, someone will take tenfold from you. We know who you are, and so does the man upstairs, and you can stop the wrongdoing and start it right here. Turn yourself in, because they are coming for you anyhow. You got away once, but you're caught now." For Law&Crime Investigates, I'm Kristin Thorne.
I love you.
Love you.